So in today's video I'm going to show you some of the techniques I use to draw portraits using graphite pencils. As always, the materials that I use in this video will be in the description. There's a few little tips and tricks to learn along the way, and I hope that you find them useful. So the first thing you want to do is sketch out your portrait. There's lots of different ways. This is probably the simplest and quickest way, and it's tracing. Now, some people might say that tracing is cheating, but you'll be surprised. There's lots of artists out there that will trace. There's artists out there, very good artists, that will use projector machines. There are people who can do it freehand, and there's other things that you can use methods like the grid method. I'll go into each one of these methods in later videos. But all you're really trying to do is just get the basics. You don't have to go into detail when tracing or drawing out your portrait. You're looking to get the general shape, any features, the shapes and positions of the eyes, the nose, the mouth. I'm going to be starting with my 2B mechanical pencil. I find this one easy to work with. And most importantly, you want to use really light pressure. So it doesn't matter if you can hardly see the lines, you will be rubbing or erasing out most of the lines anyway. When you sketch out a portrait, you're normally just doing it as a guide. Most of what you'll be doing, it will be shading and erasing. As you can see here, I'm just going over the trace and adding in all the details from the picture freehand. And just to keep you on your toes, I purposely forgot to press record when I was drawing in the underlayer for these eyes. But as you can see, what I was doing is I was just using light pressure from my mechanical pencil just to start building up the layers, as I'm doing here. I like to start with the eyes, the nose and then the mouth. It's just a starting point for me. It's all up to you where you start. Everyone has a different preference. And the important thing here again is layering. So you want to do light pressure and just keep going over the layers to darken them. This allows you to make any adjustments or erase anything that you need to do with a little bit more ease. I'm just moving down to the nose. I'm not adding too much detail to each bit, but I just want to put in the nose and mouth. And then I will go back over it throughout the drawing, just adding in the details as I see them. I'm using a blending stump. This is a thicker blending stump, just to blend in the lines, to smooth out the edges. One of the things you want to try and do is not have any sharp edges, but if you do it in layers you should be okay. Now here I'm starting to add the shading to the skin, so really light pressure here. Like I said, you can go over it and over it. You can use different blending equipment. And just to quickly show you, you can use different things to blend. Here's a Q-tip, I used a makeup applicator. So there's lots of different things you can use. Tissue paper is a really good one to get an overall skin blend. Trying to remember that obviously the shadows are cast from the light, so in this picture the light is face onto her, but she is looking slightly to the side, so the shadows are really falling on her features, on her lines, on her cheeks. I'm using a 4B pencil here, so you can use slightly softer pencils as you go to get slightly darker shading. I find obviously a pencil rather than a mechanical pencil is easier to do shading because you can hold it to the side. And this is where I'm just holding a bit of screwed up tissue just to blend and smooth in the graphite. It gives a much smoother blend when you're doing a larger area of the skin. And as you notice, the more you blend, the more the picture starts to come to life. When you first do the first couple of sketches, you sometimes think, oh, this isn't going very well, but trust in it and put in the blending, blend things together. Even when you do the shading, sometimes you think, oh, this isn't right, but once you start to blend that shading in, it comes to life. And like I've always said in the past, never be too afraid of darkness. So going darker brings the picture to life, it gives that depth to the picture. And here I'm using a mono zero mechanical eraser as well, just to add some of the highlights. And here I'm bringing in the shading for the hair. Depending on the picture that you're using, obviously this girl has got a hair in the bun, so try and shade in the direction that the hair is going. The first couple of layers are always just to give it that darkness, give it that background. I'm just using my mechanical pencil because it's a very fine nib to bring in some of the hairs that are just coming onto the hairline. But again, you don't have to worry too much at this stage, you're just really laying down the foundations. And each time you go over it, obviously it gets darker and darker, but if you can see, I'm using the mechanical pencil here to try and keep the direction of the hair. And then using the blending stump to blend everything together. Here I'm using an 8B Mars lumograph black pencil. This is a pencil that's got a graphite pencil that's got a little bit of charcoal in it, so it's just basically more of a black pencil. It doesn't matter, you don't have to use one of these, you can use a black colouring pencil or just a very black 8B pencil. And I'm also using the mechanical eraser just to bring in the highlights of the hairs. And like I said, you're just building up layers upon layers. Another little tip is to get a little bit of tracing paper or greaseproof paper, cut a little square, and that means you can safely rest your hand on the picture without smudging. And as you can see from most of this picture now, I'm just building in the layers using the harder pressure with the 8B pencil, black pencil. And now I'm going in with the darker pencil again, trying to make the hair actually have some depth. And I'm being a little bit more careful here to try and actually draw the hair. blending everything back in and using the mechanical pencil to just draw the fine hairs and really give the detail. And then I'm going back in and just going over the shading, getting the skin darker where it needs to be darker, putting in the shadows where they need to be, bringing out the features of the face. I'm using a 6B graphite pencil here, which is slightly darker again, and each time smoothing it over with my blending stumps and my tissue. And I'm also going to use a kneaded eraser along with this pencil eraser. The pencil eraser is quite good because it's sort of bendy on the end, and the kneading eraser is excellent for bringing in highlights where there's a lot of highlight but you want it to be smooth. So you can just take away and lift so it just essentially lifts the graphite away from the paper. And I'm using the mechanical pencil now to bring in the fine hairs and add in more details, and each time you go over you're adding more and more details, darkening the eyes and the irises, and now adding in or starting to add in the eyelashes. And the more and each time you go over it you start to see the picture taking shape, and the darker shadows bring the picture and lift it out, giving it more of a realistic 3D effect. And remember that eyeballs are never white, completely white, so it's okay to add a little bit of shade to them. And if you notice as well, I left 2 little light bits in the middle of the eye where the light hits them. You can brighten these using a paint pencil, or a Posca pencil in this case. You can do that a little bit later on, but it's always easier to do it when there's no pencil there in the first place. And so hopefully you've then got something that looks very much like the photograph. This is a portrait sketch using a pencil. It's not a photorealistic portrait. That is something different with different techniques that I will go into in other videos. So I really hope you've enjoyed watching.